This was a game I was looking forward to in a kind of morbid way. Vincent Kompany's first Bayern Munich Bundesliga game, and it got off to a winning start away at Wolfsburg 3-2. But it wasn't plain sailing. Bayern Munich led the game 1-0 through a goal in the first half from Jamal Musiala. Wolfsburg at the start of the second half pulled it back very quickly with two major goals that made it 2-1. And Wolfsburg in that second half caused Bayern a lot of problems. Bayern then came back into the game through an own goal and a Serge Gnabry winner. Look, there was things I liked about it, things I didn't like. And yeah, I think you have to just kind of go into it with the idea that whatever we think about Kompany, and I think there's a lot of people expecting Kompany to fail, and you can see why, because how many managers get a job like Bayern Munich off the back of relegating Burnley in the way that he did, where it felt like you could have put the R in front of their position and the red screen across their place on the table in like October, November last season. They were relegated fairly quickly in everyone's eyes. And he's gone to Bayern off the back of that. And so people are just anticipating that it's going to go a similar round. Not that Bayern are going to get relegated, but they'll do relatively as bad a job. And there were things that happened in this game where I thought, that's going to cost him. That's going to absolutely cost him his place in this job, even as soon as this season. But there was also bits, especially in attack, with the patterns that he created and the players he got into certain positions, which I quite enjoyed. But that also still came with consequences that didn't benefit him in the defensive phase. So instead of just talking about it, I'll get right into it, starting with the attacking phase as we do. Bayern would originally look to get to the ball to the fullbacks as quick as possible from when they were in goal kicks or when the goalkeeper would receive the ball. Neuer would try and chuck it into these guys as quick as possible. In the first half, it was usually going towards Bowie, but in the second half, they were getting it to Davis quite often for him to drive the ball forward. Generally, Davis is probably the better option because he is insanely quick and he's got that burst of speed. But if not, he was happy taking the ball forward as Wolfsburg weren't looking to press him. And in doing so, in driving the ball forward, just taking it up the field, that would push Wolfsburg back and it would allow Bayern Munich to get into their more attacking shape, which I'll sort out now. So in Bayern's main attacking shape, it would be in a sort of 3-2-5, 2-2-6 kind of that would meld into each other. And that would be with Elise and Gnabry coming in narrow, basically playing as second strikers alongside Harry Kane, who would stay central with a preference to the right. Davis and Bowie would be high and wide on their respective sides, maintaining the width and providing that long diagonal option from deeper areas. Chidinov and Mancano as the two centre-backs, and Pavlovic and Kimmich doing a kind of zigzag shape with their two remaining defenders, so it would have quick passes going into each other. Pavlovic in a sort of faux left-back role that could turn into a 3-1 with Kimmich in the middle of everything. And where this would get interesting, Musiala would drop deep into this area and help get on the ball. Now, that in itself isn't too much of a shock, but what would be a pretty big shock is you'd sometimes see him coming into areas between the two centre-backs, the deepest outfield player on the pitch, to receive the ball from Manuel Neuer and get on and play shorter passes to these guys. Why? I'll be honest, I have absolutely no clue. Jamal Musiala is not effective in this area of the pitch. He is not a player, if anything, and it sounds a bit weird to say because I don't think I've ever described a player this way, that you want in acres of space. Jamal Musiala, I think, works at his best where he's taken the ball in tight areas in between the lines and he can use his quick change of direction to beat players in these areas and weave in and out of situations. And he has dropped deep to form three-man midfields before on Tuchel, but it's always, again, to provide that extra option in a crowded situation and use his aforementioned dribbling ability to create openings and break out of those situations. Having him here this deep, I don't know, it just felt a bit weird. It didn't seem like it served the purpose in any way. I just don't think, and he's not a bad passer of the ball by any stretch, but he's not so good where he's going to unlock defences from this position on the pitch. But he would come into this area to play this sort of inverted left mid position type with Pavlovic dropping in at left back. You'd also get very, very wide positionings from the centre-backs. And as these guys would release their passes, they'd start making moves forward, especially Pavlovic, which was awkward because he was the one who was more in that back three out of the three midfielders. So when he'd pass and he'd move forward, it would be Kim and Upamecano. And as we're going to cover later, that was painful for the transition because they got outnumbered and outdone with the spaces that they created. But I'll go into that more in the off-the-ball phase. But what this shape did allow him to do was create those long diagonals into the fullback that would have space because of the positioning of Elise and Gnabry. They would come in narrow. They would also use that sort of diagonal movement in between fullback and centre-back to try and drag the Wolfsburg shape and more narrow. So as a result, it gave Bowie and it gave not so much Davis, because Davis didn't get fed these balls as much, especially in the second half. It felt like every attack came down the right. And this is a massive area as to where Bayern Munich shape really took off, is they'd use wide overloads with three players on each side. The left-hand side, it never really happened a lot, but it would be Gnabry on the inside, Davis at the left wing position, with Musiala coming short to create from these angles to play that ball either inside to Gnabry or outside to Davis. On the right hand side, you'd get Harry Kane dropping into these areas, and at points it did turn into a bit of a box midfield with Pavlovic, Kimmich, Kane in the right half space, Musiala on the left, with Elise and Gnabry up top. Both of which very good with their passing ability in these areas of the pitch. Kane, we know how good a playmaker he is to play balls into this area with Bowie, who then had space to cross into the ball. And once that pass goes in, Elise attacks in the short option. You get Kane arriving in the box. You get Gnabry coming in at the back post. Jamal Musiala making late runs in. And that's where the first goal came from in the first half. That's something that teams are going to really struggle with when it comes to this buying team and dealing with it. And Gnabry came into the game more in the second half and used his running, his movement, and he was able to receive the ball a little bit more because Bayern was starting to build up on their side. And it gets the best out of his positioning, his movement, and his fantastic finishing ability to take it inside and outside. He's a very two-footed player. Because of the fact they favoured the right-hand side a lot more in the first half, you'd also get Kim Min-jae offering his contribution to the overloads when he would bring the ball forward into this area, sort of like a right-back, to take it in and offer that combination play with Kane, Elise and Bowie, just to make sure that Bowie or Elise, or even Harry Kane for that matter, got more space to deliver that final pass and crushing blow to the Wolfsburg defence. But as a result, it left them further up the pitch. Now we're going to transition into the defensive side. And as I was speaking about before, because of the wide positioning of Kim and Upamecano, and because of the proclivity of Pavlovic, and Kimmich, who isn't the most mobile anyway, but Pavlovic to move forward after he's released the ball and it's in a more attacking state, they were toast in all these areas of the pitch. And it also came from when they were building that in the back as well. They would be so split. And the second goal came from that, with Pavlovic making a square ball to Kim, who had the ball up in this area here. Pavlovic then makes a move forward. He doesn't have a clear pass, and he has to look up and have to overthink it. Player comes over, I think it was Wimmer, comes over, presses him, and as a result, he nicks the ball, and he's got so much space to attack, because even as quick as Upamecano is, he's never getting there, and it's enough time to stop the shot. And that's something they're going to have to work out, because they aren't set up with a real good rest defence for when they lose the ball. And when you build up from the back and you take as many chances in possession in vulnerable areas as Vincent Kompany will like to do with Bayern, you need to make sure you have protection. And Burnley got done thousands of times, slight exaggeration, but so many times last season with this exact same method. I remember being at a game at Old Trafford where they were playing this way on the halfway line, and I can't remember who it was, played a square ball to Anthony in the middle of the pitch, and because of the width of the centre-backs, they couldn't converge on him, and he had the entire pitch to run through and score, just like Wimmer had yesterday. And he played a ball through to Major, who got his goal with the space that was created. It caused Neuer to have to make a decision coming out, and he got caught in no man's land. So that is an issue. And with that disrespect to Wolfsburg, they'll play better teams, even in the Bundesliga, especially in Europe. Imagine that against the Real Madrid. He's going to have his fun in that left channel up against Kim. But in an actual defensive phase, how would Bayern Munich look? Now, when Wolfsburg were building up, Bayern would press high and they press aggressively and they try and win the ball back as quick as possible. And that would be with Elise coming in onto the right centre back as Kane would go onto the left, Musiala in the 10 behind, and Sacha Bowie coming up into the left back and pressing really high with the two midfielders on their two midfielders in the more advanced positions. Kim moving into the right back position, Gnabry on the right back, pushed high, pushed aggressive, and if they tried to build up from the outside, so let's say Kaminsky dropping in deep and they tried to play around, and if Thomas offered a shorter option, Kim would have no issues coming with him into this half to engage with him. As I say, full throttle, heavy metal, trying to win the ball back as quick as possible. Bar Upamecano, that isn't a defence that's equipped to deal with that. Kim isn't the most mobile of defenders. Bowie and Davis, as we'll touch on more in a second, aren't the most defensively sound of fullbacks. So this is all about individual battles, and you have to win them. If not, they're going to get punished. But in the first half, they won the ball back 17 times. Wolfsburg couldn't play out. But where they could get success was when they pushed them a lot deeper in the second half, which if I just saw that out now, then would drop into a 4-2-3-1 shape, where they'd still have the element of man marking, so the midfield could get pulled a lot. So if Arnold came into this position, Kimmich would follow suit. And if Major would go up alongside Wimmer, then Pavlovic could get dragged into the back line. We saw that a lot. So A lot of openings, a lot of ways that this Bayern team can get manipulated. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of complete man marking systems because you're at the mercy of the opponent shape and they can open you up how they want to. And this is something we'll see in more detail, I guess, when Bayern play a side of equal quality. But where this really disrupted them a lot more was when they went a lot more direct to Wimmer and he'd come into these deeper areas to get on the ball. Mancana would be the one that would break from the defensive line to engage with him, leaving Kim alone in the centre with space between him and the fullbacks, which they didn't cover around, and especially Bowie in that second half. And it felt like the first goal came from this, the penalty came from the situation that happened again later on, but didn't lead to a goal, fortunately for Bayern. Wimmer would win the ball, and it would go this side of Kim, and Bowie, not tracking the role of Tomas, would get in front of him, and he'd react. He gave away the penalty, didn't get close to him later on in the half, and the awareness of the fullbacks, the head movements, the scanning isn't there, and that's too much room for Kim to cover. He hasn't got the mobility and the confidence in his fullbacks around him to make the most out of that space, and that got opened up enough. Upamecano was a bit too much of a hothead, and he can get dragged out of position, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of cohesiveness around that back four. It feels like they're defending too individually at points, and as I say, when you don't have that defensive quality to win your individual battles, you will get done in. And the fact that they were getting opened up that easily in a point in the game where they were in a deep defensive state doesn't scream good vibes for Kompany, and it's something he's going to have to sort out quick. Look, they got the win, they got the job done, but this is a Bayern team which feels like it does need to get up a level to reclaim their Bundesliga title. It's a strong Bundesliga this year, and it feels like that this Bayern Munich team lacks a little bit of what have made Bayern Munich teams great. And again, Kompany as a coach, you can't have the utmost amount of faith in because of what's happened over the last year. But we'll see where we go from this. Some bits of attacking quality to be really encouraged by, defensive issues galore, and I guess we'll see how this develops. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Any Bayern fans, tell me what you think of him. And I'll see you next time, guys. Bye bye for now.